you ever check your bank account after payday, see that balance, and think, okay, I'm finally getting somewhere? And then 2 weeks later, poof, rent, bills, groceries, and suddenly you're back to square one.
That cycle feels endless. Endless, right?
Now here's the kicker. Millionaires don't play that game the way you think they do. In fact, the average millionaire keeps way less cash than most people imagine. And the reason why will completely change how you think about money. My name is Alex, and I spend way too much time thinking about how much cash the average millionaire actually keeps. And trust me, it's not what you think. If you're someone who's constantly worried about whether you should save more, invest more, or just keep cash for emergencies, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's the thing. Most people assume millionaires have giant piles of cash just sitting in their bank accounts. You know the image glow, like Scrooge McDuck, diving into a vault of gold coins, swimming around in endless stacks of money. That cartoon fantasy has been burned into our heads since childhood. But that's not reality. In fact, it's almost the opposite of reality. According to a study by Spectrum Group, millionaires keep only about 2 to 5% of their net worth in cash. Let me say that again because it's shocking. Just 2 to 5%.
And that's not a typo. It's not $200,000. It's not $500,000. It's a fraction.
That means if someone has $1 million, they might only have $20,000, $50,000 liquid in their checking or savings account. The rest of their wealth is tied up in assets, investments, businesses, real estate, stocks, bonds, even collectibles. Basically, anything that grows or produces income. Now compare that to the average American household. For regular folks, cash savings often represent 10 to 15% of their total net worth. So ironically, middle-class families keep more of their wealth in cash than millionaires do. Think about that for a second. The people who have the least tend to hold the highest percentage of their wealth in cash. That's a complete reversal of what most people imagine.
Don't want their money sitting idle. They don't see cash as wealth. They see cash as a tool, useful for transactions, emergencies, or opportunities, but dangerous if it just sits there.
It doesn't grow, it doesn't compound, it doesn't generate income. Thanks to inflation, it shrinks in value every single year. The average person feels safer holding on to cash. Millionaires actually feel exposed sitting in a bank account doing nothing. That's where the first big mindset shift comes in. Millionaires don't measure wealth by how much cash they can see. Assets are quietly working for them behind the scenes, growing, compounding, generating income while they sleep. Let's break this down with real numbers, because numbers don't lie. Imagine you have a net worth of $1 million. You wouldn't be sitting on $500,000 in cash. Instead, you'd keep maybe $30,000. Maybe even private equity or alternative assets. Their money is constantly in motion, constantly working.
Now compare that to someone with a net worth of $100,000.
Might keep $15,000 in cash, which is 15% of their wealth. 5 times the proportion of cash compared to the millionaire. The person with less money is holding more of it idle, while the person with more money is holding less idle and putting the rest to work. Most people don't realize millionaires don't want their money sitting idle.
They want it working for them. Think of cash like an employee. If you had 100 employees but 15 of them were just sitting around doing nothing, you'd fire them or put them to work.
Millionaires think the same way about money. Every dollar should have a job, earning interest, generating rent, producing dividends, or appreciating in value.
Suppose inflation is 3% per year. Over a decade, that's nearly $5,000 gone just from sitting idle.
That $15,000 in cash loses about $450 in value every year. Meanwhile, if that same $15,000 were invested in an index fund averaging 7% returns, it could grow to $29,500 in 10 years. That's the difference between money shrinking and money multiplying. They don't see cash as wealth, and they see it as temporary storage. It's like parking your car in the driveway. Millionaires keep just enough cash to stay flexible, but they deploy the rest into vehicles that move them forward financially. Here's the mindset shift. Millionaires understand that cash loses value every single year because of inflation. If inflation is 3%, that $50,000 in cash is worth only $48,500 next year in real terms. Stretch that out over 5 years and you've lost nearly $7,000 in purchasing power without spending a dime. That's why they move money into assets that grow faster than inflation. Stocks, real estate, businesses, even bonds. They want their wealth compounding, not eroding. Think of it like this. Cash is a melting ice cube. It looks solid, it feels safe, but leave it sitting there and it slowly disappears. Assets, on the other hand, are like planting seeds. They may take time to grow, but eventually they produce fruit year after year. Millionaires would rather have an orchard that keeps producing than a freezer full of ice cubes that melt away. And this leads to the final realization. The psychological comfort of cash is actually a trap. It tricks you into thinking you're safe, when in reality, you're losing ground. Millionaires flip that psychology. They see safety not in the illusion of cash, but in the reality of assets that fight inflation, generate income, and build long-term freedom. Now you might be thinking, wait, but don't millionaires need cash for emergencies too? And that's a fair question, because emergencies happen to everyone. But here's the difference. Millionaires don't rely on a giant pile of cash on difference. Their emergencies are covered by liquidity in investments, access to lines of credit, or even business cash flow that's constantly moving in and out.
In other words, their safety net isn't a savings account. It's a system.
Think of it like this. If you own a rental property, millionaires don't see cash as the only emergency fund.
They see their entire portfolio as flexible, like a toolbox with multiple instruments. Here's what most people don't realize. Cash is just one form of liquidity. They see their entire portfolio as flexible, like a toolbox with multiple instruments. First layer, the small amount of cash they keep for immediate needs. Second layer, highly liquid investments, like stocks or ETFs. Third layer, credit lines or leverage. Low interest. Fourth layer, ongoing cash flow from businesses or properties. Together, these layers form a safety net, stronger and more resilient than any single savings account. But millionaires diversify across asset classes, so if one layer shakes, another stays stable. Rental income flows, bonds pay interest, businesses keep earning. Diversify. And with access to credit, millionaires bridge short-term gaps smoothly without panic. So while the average person thinks emergencies as solved by a pile of cash, millionaires think of emergencies as solved by flexibility. Their portfolio is their emergency fund. That mindset allows them to keep growing wealth instead of letting fear lock money in a savings account. Imagine cash like food in your fridge. You need enough to eat today and tomorrow, maybe even for the next week.
That's practical. That's smart.
But if you stockpile 6 months of food in that same fridge, most of it spoils. It goes bad, it loses its value, and eventually you're left with waste instead of nourishment.
Millionaires understand this principle deeply. They keep just enough cash for short-term needs, and the rest is invested in a pantry that keeps replenishing itself.
Think about how a well-run household works. You don't buy 6 months of milk at once because you know it will expire. Instead, you buy what you need for the week, and you rely on the grocery store to restock when you run out.
Millionaires treat their investments like that grocery store. Their assets are constantly replenishing, constantly producing income, dividends, rent, or appreciation.
So they don't need to hoard cash in the fridge. They know the pantry is always being restocked.
Cash feels comforting because you can see it, touch it, and count it. It's like opening the fridge and seeing it full of food. You feel secure.
But that security is an illusion if most of that food is going to spoil.
Millionaires flip the psychology. They'd rather have a smaller fridge and a massive pantry, full of ingredients that last, grow, and multiply. Instead of buying vegetables every week, your garden produces them continuously.
That's what assets do. Stocks grow, real estate pays rent, businesses generate profits.
The average person clings to the fridge because it feels safe. While millionaires trust the pantry, you can rely on sustainable solutions for your home too.
And the garden, because they know it's sustainable. One is short-term comfort, the other is long-term freedom.
Millionaires don't measure wealth by cash hoarded, but by replenishing systems that keep the pantry full forever. Here's what most people don't realize. The average millionaire actually has less cash than the average middle-class family, proportionally. That sounds upside down, right? Because we've been conditioned to believe wealth equals giant piles of cash. But in reality, millionaires are far more disciplined about keeping their money in motion. They don't measure wealth by the size of their checking account, and they measure it by how many assets are working for them at any given moment. Millionaires often use debt strategically. They'll borrow at 4% interest to invest in something that earns 8%. That spread profit, the difference between what they pay and what they earn, is pure leverage. Meanwhile, most people are terrified of debt. They cling to cash because it feels safe. But in doing so, they miss out on opportunities to grow. Millionaires flip the script, and they see debt not as danger, but as a tool.
They see debt not as danger, but as a tool, provided it's used wisely.
Here's the borrowing setup: a $100,000 loan at 4%. The interest adds up.
Work frozen. That's $4,000 extra.
Here's the return potential. 8% equals $8,000 gain. Here's the net result: a $4,000 profit overall. Here's the borrowed money advantage. It's leverage, not your own cash. For the average person, inflation eats away at savings. See the difference here from shrinking savings to growing assets. Cash feels like comfort, but assets drive growth. Leverage is the key. It multiplies growth faster. Fear shrinks savings. Discipline grows assets. Here's the surprising part. Millionaires keep assets, not cash. Millionaires make money work harder through systems, assets, and discipline. It's one thing to understand, but it's another to apply that mindset in your own life. So here are the actionable steps you can start using today.
Step 1 is always the emergency fund.
Keep 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash. That's your fridge food, the stuff you need immediately to survive. This is your safety net, your peace of mind. It's not meant to grow, it's meant to protect.
Millionaires do this too, but they don't go beyond it. Once the fridge is stocked, they stop piling food that will spoil.
Step 2. Move excess cash into assets. This is where most people hesitate, but it's the critical shift. Index funds, real estate, or even side businesses hoard sale. These are the pantries and gardens that keep replenishing themselves.
If you've got $20,000 sitting in savings beyond your emergency fund, that's money that should be working. Put it into something that compounds, something that fights inflation, something that builds freedom. Step 3. Stop obsessing over dollar amounts. Think in percentages.
Millionaires think in ratios, not raw numbers. They ask, what percentage of my wealth is working versus sitting? That's the smarter metric.
Step 4. Remember inflation eats cash.
At 3% inflation, $10,000 loses $300 in value every year. Over a decade, that's $3,000 gone. Assets fight back. Stocks grow. Real estate appreciates. Businesses generate income.
Millionaires don't let inflation quietly rob them. They fight back by keeping money in growth vehicles. Stop thinking of cash as safety. Think of diversification as safety.
Safety comes from multiple streams of income, multiple asset classes, and multiple ways to access liquidity. Millionaires sleep well at night not because they have piles of cash, but because they know their money is spread across systems that protect them.
Sarah had $200,000 saved, and out of that, she kept $50,000 in cash because it felt safe.
On paper, that looked responsible. Friends and family even praised her for being smart with money.
But here's the hidden problem. Inflation was quietly eroding that cash year after year.
At just 3% inflation, her $50,000 lost about $1,500 in purchasing power annually. Over 5 years, that's more than $7,500 gone without her spending a single dime. And while she felt secure seeing that balance, the truth was her money was shrinking.
Meanwhile, the other $150,000 sat in conservative savings accounts and low-yield bonds. She thought she was protecting herself, but she was freezing her financial future. She missed out on years of compounding growth because fear kept her tied to cash. Her $50,000 cash comfort blanket had transformed into a growing, replenishing system. That's the millionaire mindset shift.
Eventually, Sarah realized she was stuck. She watched friends who invested in real estate and index funds grow their wealth faster, while her savings barely moved. That's when she decided to take the leap.
She invested $100,000 into a rental property.
That cash flow became her new emergency fund.
Suddenly, her net worth wasn't just numbers on a bank statement, it was an asset producing monthly rent checks. And here's the kicker. Not only did her property generate cash flow, but it also appreciated in value. Within 5 years, the property was worth $130,000, and she had collected tens of thousands in rent. Instead of draining savings when unexpected expenses came up, she used rental income to cover them. And that's the millionaire mindset shift. Her $50,000 cash comfort blanket had transformed into a growing, replenishing system. Millionaires don't rely on static piles of cash. They rely on assets that generate income and grow over time. Sarah's story proves the point. Safety isn't about hoarding cash. It's about building systems that keep replenishing themselves. So the next time you check your bank account and feel like you're behind, remember, millionaires don't measure wealth by cash balances. They measure it by how many assets are working for them. If you want to get there, start small, shift your psychology, and invest consistently. My name is Alex. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.